Hello, everybody. Hey, welcome to the first ever show of Comics Curing Cancer. You excited? Woo! So I'd like to introduce your host, the brilliant, the funny, Matthew Murtha.
Hello. Yes. Are you guys ready to talk science tonight? Excellent. So welcome to our very first episode of Comics Curing Cancer. I have a little note here from our lawyers. I should state that we will not be curing cancer tonight. I'm sorry. Next week, though, I guarantee you, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, we're going to cure it. So just so you guys know, this is our first show, and I would like just to start out by letting you know what we hope to do here with this show. So we're trying to thread the needle between entertainment and education, yeah? We want to showcase Barcelona's best researchers and reach a wide audience, and so we feel the best way to do that is through comedy. I think it's going to be a great show. If you guys ever have feedback, feel free to let us know. 1 second. We have a crack staff of over 300 people. We're actually broadcasting live now to what I'm sure is just tens of millions of people. For those of you tuning in, you can't see the audience, but there's at least, I'd say, like maybe 300 people. That's right. It's going to be a great show tonight. So let me begin by introducing my co-host for the evening, Miss Hannah Becker.
Hello. Hey, nerds.
How's it going, Hannah?
It's good. I'm feeling good. I feel like this mic isn't very loud.
No? Well,
No?
that was because I don't want you stealing my thunder.
Aww.
No. Tell us a little about yourself. Where are you from? What do you research?
I research languages.
Get off my stage.
Yeah, sorry. No, I'm not a scientist, but I'm interested in science. I'm interested in learning and knowledge, and also making a fool of myself. So I think we're going to be a great pair up here, Matt.
And it should be said, she is one of Barcelona's funniest women.
Yeah, thanks. I hope so.
Yeah. So, how about we begin by going through some latest and greatest science news and headlines, yeah?
Let's do it.
All right. First up, from the Journal of Sexual Health. Studies suggest that 80% of women fake their orgasms. It's true.
Only 80%?
Researchers were able to determine that a genuine orgasm tends to have a rising intonation, moans, a quickened heartbeat, and a curling of the toes.
And a fake orgasm probably sounds like, oh, Matt. Oh, Matt, yes. Oh, Matt. Yes.
To be fair, as a scientist, I think that this study suffers from what most studies do, which is to say a small sample size.
I don't think it's a sample size that's small, Matt.
Moving right along. A new study, I think that was published in the journal Nature, suggests that dogs actually have a more complex understanding of human language. They're able to distinguish between intonation and actual vocabulary words.
Oh, shit. So when I talk to my dog, like, who's a little shithead? Who's so stupid? You are. Was I, like, totally scarring him for life or something?
I don't think that was it. I think it was rubbing peanut butter all over your naked body.
That was one time. Come on.
Anyway, though, what I was wondering when I read that, though, is if it makes it that much weirder when you have sex in front of your dog.
I think you shouldn't be having sex in dog parks, Matt. Is the real issue here.
I like it doggy style.
I read 300 reindeer died in a lightning strike in Norway last week. The Norwegian authorities said they were shocked. But
That joke was for all the dads in the audience.
And me.
But no, it's actually true. So the anti-intellectual conservatives out there are claiming this a victory. They suggest that, in fact, they don't need to learn statistics because not only can lightning strike once, but it can strike the same place over 300 times. That's not true.
Oh, and what about that? Isn't Blitzen, Santa's reindeer, isn't that the German word for lightning? Is that a weird coincidence or something, maybe?
Maybe he was just trying to tell Santa who's really boss.
Yeah.
He got jealous of
Be
Rudolph.
the most famous reindeer of all. Blitzen.
Actually, military experts are saying that God himself has claimed responsibility for the attack. They call this the most significant escalation in the war on Christmas.
Oh, yeah. Gotta be careful.
Do they have that here? War on Christmas?
The holiday seasons are coming up. What else? Oh, I read this article in the New York Post, and it like totally blew my mind. It was talking about how kids are addicted to their electronic devices, the way that people can be addicted to drugs like heroin, crack. Like, what do you think about that?
So I read this article, and as a public service announcement, I would like to state that when you read something and they try to claim science and they do not cite a single study or statistic or anything, you can probably take that article as a big pile, heaping, smelly pile of dog shit.
Yeah. No, I guess they did say something about how like people can live without drugs or alcohol, which, knowing you, not sure if that's really good science right there.
Just goes to show you can't believe what you read in the New York Post.
Yeah, I mean, they did say, okay, I'll read some quotes. So, the director of neuroscience at UCLA calls screens electronic cocaine. Chinese researchers call them digital heroin. The head of addiction at the Pentagon calls them digital pharmakeia. And Bill Cosby called them a missed opportunity. Ooh.
Hannah, that article was a piece of shit, and I'll tell you why. It states, and I quote, that these screens are harmful because children, quote, need to be perpetually stimulated by their hyper-arousing devices. Now, I know for a fact that that is not, in fact, harmful, and I know that because the term perpetually stimulated by their hyper-arousing devices, that pretty much describes male adolescence.
Yeah. So I think that's all of our science news and comedy.
That's the week in science, yeah.
Week in science.
All right, so tonight's guest is the great Dr. Kadri Reis. But before we welcome her on, it got me thinking. So we now live in the age of genomics, yeah? And so for those of you that don't know, this is an age where DNA sequencing technology has unlocked the secrets of the human genome. So the genome is best understood as a huge string of 4 letters, yeah? 300 billion letters long. Now, in reality, it's a string of molecules called nucleic acids, but nobody understands that. So we like to think of it as letters. Now, if you were to make the genome into a book, put all these letters side by side onto pages, that book would have over a million pages and would be 200 feet tall. Yeah? Now, of course, scientists look at this and they say, well, the best way to understand this is with statistics. We could perform a statistical analysis and find out which words or frequencies or genes or regulatory elements occur more often, yeah? Of course, only a scientist would look at a book and say, aha, the answer to this is math. Now, if you heard a groan just now, it's all the literature majors in the audience dying a little bit on the inside. All right, so in order to do these statistical analyses, you have to perform these complex computations, yeah? And so now we take advantage of supercomputers in order to make these computations. Of course, in order to do that, you basically have to write code every time. Yeah? Do we have any bioinformaticians in the audience? No. They don't go out at night. Oh, we do. Excellent. All right, this joke's for you. So I recently, in my own work, I tried to start learning how to code. Why? I ask myself that all the time. Yeah. So coding is really annoying. You have to utilize a very special language, and of course, it's not your native language, which I think a lot of people here can relate to. No Spanish, huh? All right. But so coding is really tedious, yeah? So you write out 200 lines of code, and then you hit enter, and you expect a result. But of course, what actually happens, or at least when I do it, is that nothing happens. Yeah? You go through all that work, and nothing happens. And so you know you fucked up, but you're not quite sure what. And I think that in this way, that code programming is really like having the worst girlfriend in the world. Because you know you fucked up, but she won't tell you what. Right? Maybe now with some of the new programming software, it might give you a suggestion. It might say like, parentheses. And so you say, come on, there's over 50 pairs of parentheses in there. Which one? You should know. You know that parentheses are important to me. But this has done some great stuff for humanity at large. I like to use a study that came out in Genome Research last year. And so what researchers did there is they sequenced the mitochondrial DNA, which is passed down only through women, through the mitochondria in the egg. And then they compared the variation of sequences and mutations in that to the variations that occur in the Y chromosome, which is only passed down through man. And so by comparing the rate of mutations, they could actually calculate how many men were sleeping with or impregnating how many women. And this is really powerful stuff, because what they found is that through most of human evolution, so starting from 100,000 years ago, proto-humans, up to about 20,000 years ago, the dawn of agriculture, it was about one lucky guy for maybe three women or so, yeah? Then at the dawn of agriculture, what happened is there was a switch. And all of a sudden, it spiked. One man was now impregnating 20 women. Lucky guy. But what I claim, or what I find interesting, so this is where the bioinformatics and genomics stops, and now sociology takes over. And you ask yourself, what's going on at that time? And lots of people will point to agriculture and to the rise of the concept of property. But what I think actually happened is that what was created is the asshole gene. Yeah, no, this is the dawn of patriarchy in your genetics. Because what happened is at some point some guy looked around and he just said, "No, all that's mine." And I think personally, that this trait is still alive and powerful in our communities now. Being in a country that has its own past with a fascist dictator who said, "No, the whole country, that's mine." And having been from the United States, where we're now flirting with electing a fascist dictator, I think that this stuff is informative. So it's unclear at the moment that the asshole gene was born, whether there was a monolith present and the monkeys were bashing each other with bones. 2001: Space Odyssey? Nobody? You guys are not really nerds. So it's unclear whether or not that was it. But I find these things to be intensely interesting, and I hope that we can invite sociologists and geneticists and all sorts of disciplines onto the show so we can actually begin these discussions and, importantly, begin to talk about and describe the experiments that would reveal even more about our nature. Yeah? So we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to invite on our guest for the evening, Miss Dr. Kadri Rice. Woo!
That's right, give me a big hug. You know I'll treat you right. Oh girl, make it a quick one. I'm only here tonight. I'm no sadder but wiser. I'm still the same old guy. Take a look at me. See, I couldn't look no better. Girl, I'm at the peak. And that's a fact, that's a fact. Take a part of me. You know it couldn't feel no better. Take it all with ease before you break your back or get a heart attack. at me. See, I couldn't look no better. Girl, I'm at my peak, and that's a fact, that's a fact. Take a part of me, you know it couldn't feel no better. Make sure that you breathe before you break your back or get a heart attack. I'm a wonderful thing, baby. Such a wonderful. I'm a wonderful thing, baby. Such a That's right, I got a lady in every foreign port. Somewhere I even got me a stranger by the shore. I know I'm going crazy, cause I want more and more. Sometimes I don't remember just who I'm looking for. I'm a wonderful thing, baby. I'm a wonderful thing, baby, baby. Wonderful. I'm a wonderful thing, baby. Such a wonderful thing. Wait a minute, wait.
Science is happening.
Abby, you remember Abby? It's Abby Long. Abby Long up on Southern Boulevard. You remember Abby Long? Right. And it was Amanda Blue. Amanda Blue. I am Amanda.
La 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 la.
How many is it? I ain't counting. There's more. Sophie.
Pew, pew, pew.
Say something smart.
Hey.
Ha!
Impossible.
Trick question.
Jerk.
Just so people know, there's plenty of seats over here down. If you guys want to move closer and move in, tighten.
Yeah.
We're going to get started in about a minute.
So yeah, finish ordering your drinks and come on back. Is this? No, it's this one. Did you fix it? But we need to have all. What? What?
Is my... Now it is. Nobody studies acoustics here, yeah? No?
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's get started, yeah? Woo! All right. So let's give a big round of applause for our first guest, the newly minted PhD. She studied at the CRG here on the beach, Dr. Kadri Rice. So there you go. So I like to begin with just a small introduction, some easy questions, so we can get to know Dr. Kadri as a person. Right? She's not just a scientist. So what exactly is the rate constant for the dissociation of retinaldehyde from the rhodopsin apoprotein?
Excuse me, Matt. Oh wait, it must be like some first order chemical reaction. I don't know. I have no.
No, that's fine. That's a trick question. I don't think what I said made sense. No. So where are you from?
So I'm. Hello, everyone. I'm from.
It's a support group.
Exactly. Hi.
I'm a scientist too. Struggle with it every day.
I'm from Estonia. Anyone from Estonia here?
Woo!
Oh.
Yeah.
We got some Estonians in the crowd.
Well, yeah, he doesn't count. I kind of know him, so. Well, he still counts, but it's like not surprising for me. Yeah, so Estonia. That's fine.
Okay. Is it nice there?
It's very nice there, and we have very beautiful islands. And I'm actually from an island. People are surprised to hear that Estonian have islands. We have 1,500 islands. Science members. Wow, yeah, I know.
Why don't you brag about it? So how did you know that you were first interested in science?
How did I know I was in science? Well, I was a nerd when I was a kid. Hard to believe, right? So I used to live in an island, so it's a very small place. I often spent my days in the forest with my dog. So I did actually like nature a lot, but I also liked math and chemistry. So kind of thought I'm gonna combine them, and genetics came out of this, I guess.
Yeah, do what you're good at, yeah. I don't know. That's why I got into the field. Surprisingly enough, yeah. So how do you feel about being a woman in scientist? Woman in science, actually.
A woman and a scientist.
Woman scientist. I can tell you how I feel about it, but trust me.
Well, yeah, I have to admit it's sometimes difficult because science is quite male-ruled world, I guess. But I think sometimes it's even, for me it has been better in a sense that I'm quite stubborn. So like when I see that men don't want to take me seriously when I'm trying to talk about, chemistry, so I, make sure that my word gets heard or something. So it pushes me more to do stuff, I guess.
So you find a challenge?
It's a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. In every lab I worked in, there's always been more men than women, and especially as a blonde girl, it's not that easy to make people take me seriously.
Yeah, that's true. I was gonna say no.
Amen.
I can tell you, as a blonde woman, no one takes me seriously. How many people here are from research in general? Yes.
Oh,
very
wow.
nice. Very nice.
Oh,
Just
impressive.
generally, do you guys find that there are more men in your field than women, or mixed crowd? Yeah. So.
Yeah. Who said yes? What do you study?
Yeah. Yeah. Notice she said single. That's on you, sister. And from the more equal fields. Can't. Exactly. Yeah, that's been my experience. But so, as a dude or whatever, I work. I don't want to brag. Exactly. That's exactly the point I was going to make. Yeah. So it seems that there's a lot of women working in molecular biology, studying genetics and the pathways, signaling pathways for that. But the PIs, the principal investigators, the people in charge, the department chairs, it still seems to be male-dominated there. Yeah. Do you think that's going to change? Yeah, I hope so too.
We all hope so.
Well, look, I've been trying to make babies so much.
Well, they're easy to make. It's just looking after them.
Yeah, I don't want any part of that. So I'm going to be a great PI one day. Kadri, so when you were at the bench, when you were working, doing experiments every day, what time of the day were you happiest, though?
So when are you like implying that I was happy in the lab?
Yeah, but like, is it possible? So for people at home or people that are not actually researchers, they always have this idea of science that it looks like CSI, that you can just like push a button on a computer and it does things for you and gives you information.
It's not like that. Why am I on this show then? I thought this was going to be fun.
The point of the show is to ruin the hopes and dreams of children across the world. But no, it's actually very tedious, it's very difficult, but yet you still find some enjoyment there sometimes.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, I have to say, as a morning person, I do like mornings because I guess you still have this kind of belief that everything is possible. You know, like you have another hope, another day, and like in front of you. But then there's midnight. Then you're like, oh fuck, nothing happened again. So that's how it's working.
All right, so would you mind telling us a bit about your research?
Sure, but I have to, keep it undercover because it's not published yet. So I'm gonna just use code words.
All right, she won't brag about this, but she has a paper under review at Science, right? That's right.
Yeah.
And so she won't talk about any of that tonight, but she will talk about her published work.
I actually haven't published any of my work, so no, because like I have. Yeah, okay, fine. Yeah, I'm very famous in science and have very great papers. Mm-hmm. Thanks, Matt.
Google her. Google her.
Yeah, don't Google me. You get weird pictures.
Her name is Frances Crick.
So yeah, actually no. Like seriously, I would like to share about some stuff about my work.
Wow.
Thank
Now
you.
we can do
now
some
it's getting
science.
easier again.
Yeah, so
Yeah, so I'm working with something called Epigenetics. Do you guys know what it is? So for you don't know, it's basically epi means in front of the genetics. It's really literally above the genetics. So anything that is not. Why are you laughing?
I'll tell you in a moment.
So as a kind of example story, I wanted to how people to make people understand what I mean by epigenetic is to imagine the genes as a script, like a movie script, and all the cells in your body are the actors and actresses in that movie. And basically, the whole movie is like as long as your lifespan is. And then, so there's a director of the movie who's gonna tell each cell which part of the script to actually read. Because every cell in your body has the same script, but some of the cells don't really care about most of the stuff what is there. And so the director of the movie, like who's actually deciding which cells are reading which part, director of the movie can get information, for example, from the environment, but also it's often normal developmental signals that kind of, help you get older and progress in your life. So I like to use this movie script analogy to kind of bring this to attention to people, because people sometimes don't really understand that every cell actually is really containing the same information, but they must read it differently, because how else could you have eye cells and skin cells and everything? So what I actually study particularly, I study the inheritance of epigenetics. So inheritance can be two different types, right? So within your body, every cell, gives rise to daughter cells. So this is already one type of inheritance. But I think more important and more interesting inheritance is the one that is transgenerational. So like through jumping from one generation to the other. So this means that even though it was long believed that only DNA can be inherited and genetics is the one causing inheritance, but epigenetics is also, it turns out it can also affect your kids and your grandkids. So why it is important is, for example, whatever you do in your life, you think you're just fucking up your life when you drink a lot and smoke a lot. And
I don't know what you're talking about.
but you must think that you can also like really cause some shitty things for your kids and grandkids. And so there's this one interesting story from I think it was after the Second World War, towards the end of the Second World War, 1944-45, when there was this Dutch hunger winter. Do you know about this? So there was like a famine, and all the people, like a lot of people, were starving. And so it has been shown that the kids from those mothers, they have, first of all, they were smaller than when they were born, and also it turned out that even their kids were also smaller when they were born. So it means that the mothers who were suffering from famine, they gave this, this knowledge of hunger to their kids and grandkids. And why is it important? Because they also show that those kids have a higher chance to get diabetes, for example. So when you eat like very poorly, you can also affect your kids and grandkids again. And also, yeah, like when you start smoking really young, your kids can have an effect of that. So no smoking, Matt.
So we can blame my grandparents.
Yeah, I'm hoping to make the future better, not like to find someone to blame, but
I
fine.
have no hope for the future.
So yeah, and just to kind of say how we study this epigenetics, as I don't like to kill animals, I can't really work in a laboratory where they use rats and stuff. And so that's why I'm working with worms, like tiny worms. So they are kind of alive, but not really. So they are like this, the
Just
adult,
like all the non-scientists in the crowd.
the adult worm is 1 millimeter long, so they are very tiny, and also why it's very nice to study use this as model organs, because they are we can use them to study generations, because in 3 days the worms already have babies and they grow up, and so we can see actually what happens between generations. With humans, we can't really do it because, first of all, for ethical reasons, and also, of course, like the ethics, and also because the life cycle is a bit too long for to make actually any conclusions. So,
All right,
worms.
so can I ask you some questions?
Sure.
Goddamn right I can. All right, first up. No, excuse me. So I find it curious. Do you find that the epigenetic inheritance, can you impact environmentally one generation and then find markers of that in the next generation?
Yes. Well, the studies suggest, because what happens at the fertilization, right? So, like how babies are made, right? So what happens at the fertilization? All these kind of epigenetic marks actually swiped off from the DNA, because every organism then starts making their own epigenetic marks. But now more and more studies show that actually some of the marks are not swiped off, and that's what kind of causes the inheritance of some of those marks and traits.
Right, these are called imprinted marks.
Yeah, imprinting,
imprinted
yes.
genes. But no, what's curious though is that, so when we think of sexual reproduction, the genome is packaged inside the male, and then in the male sperm, and then the female genome is packaged classically inside the egg, yeah? What you're trying to suggest is that there's a mechanism for telling the egg, look, I went through famine, so you want to have these genes bookmarked, ones for metabolism and things like that. Do you think there's an active mechanism for demarcating which genes are important for the future?
That's what I was going to ask too.
All right, let me say that a little differently. All right, so because humans, we have a way of doing this that is epigenetics, or above genetics, as you say.
What do you like about that?
Well, no, I just know that you're epigeneticist because you think you're above genetics. I thought epi meant outside, but whatever. But no, so humans have a mechanism to do that, and we call that culture. You can actually teach your children one way or another. But you're suggesting a biological mechanism for accomplishing the same thing, yeah?
Yes.
All right, well, how does that work?
Closer to my actual question. So how does that work, Kadri?
Well, there are like so. Yes.
We should state, all right, everybody in the audience, or most of the audience, is a researcher. And honestly, if you ever talk to a researcher about anything, you know that they're a decent person because they go, well, like there's always caveats, yeah? Researchers know just how much they don't know. It's assholes in other professions that are like, no, this is the way it is. No bitterness. But, so, to the extent of your knowledge.
Yeah. Well, for example, I can again bring an example from my lovely worms. So, for example, it's for some sequences in a DNA, it's very important to keep them silent because it's very tedious to always, go and check them if they need to be translated into proteins or something. So they are kept silenced throughout, the generations and generations. So there must be some active mechanisms, yes, that tell, also for the next generation, okay, this part should be always silenced, and this is. It's going to be continuously silenced until it's messed up.
All right, another technical question. Do you study more modifications to histone proteins or to DNA, like DNA itself, like methylation?
Yes, it's a very excellent question.
And feel free to chime in when we sail above common knowledge.
So
I like to think sailing above.
I'll listen to her answer first.
No, that's the thing as well. Is like I think the DNA methylation probably is more interesting for humans, but as in worms, we don't actually have DNA methylation. We only have histone modifications.
Don't say we. You're
So-
better than that, Kadri.
So worms only have histone modification. So we are like I am not studying, or I didn't study anything actually on the DNA, only histones. So histones are basically the packaging stuff for the DNA, because it's very like if you imagine a DNA, it's a long string of letters. So it's a lot of stuff. So how to actually package it all into the cell? So the cell uses histones and to make it very compact. And so also these histones actually can then aid to tell the cell which parts to use, because when the DNA is very, very compact, the translating machineries that are trying to read this DNA, they can't even see it because it's just like so cramped together. So yes, that's the histone modifications.
That's the thing I was kind of curious about. So, stop me at any point. But
Stop,
no,
Matt.
when the genome's packaged inside these gametes, I forget the name of the sex cells. What's the name for like sperm? Without having to say sperm, because my mother's gonna listen to this and. Is it gamete?
Yeah, gametes.
Gamete. All right.
Gamete.
So what's like the Hannah?
Yes.
So when a boy worm meets a girl worm.
Okay.
They are hermaphrodites.
Oh.
God.
Well, it is 2016, so okay. No, but 20,000. That's enough of this. But do you happen to know, for the sake of my own curiosity, like what the major mark is for compacted chromosomes? All right, I know this
Major mark?
Yeah, so I apologize. But all right, so trimethylated H3K9
Yeah,
is like
H3K9 trimethylation, yeah.
serious condensed chromatin.
And K27 trimethylation as well.
Yeah, that's it. But like in gametes though, is the whole genome just packed down with that mark, or Hannah, stop me.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, that's why
No, I think it's probably yes, and I think it's really more the K27, not the K9. Sorry.
Really? All right, well, we can fight about it. No,
Or read about it.
or maybe I should read your work.
Once it's in science, you can.
Yeah. Fighting words. All right, so you work with this worm genetic model. What other techniques and methods do you use the most?
So all this, as I said, like the DNA has all those like fancy marks on it. So we can use these kind of methods, for example, that we have antibodies. So we can just go and snatch all this interesting stuff, and then we can sequence the underlying DNA that was covered by those marks. So a lot of antibody studies. And worms are actually super cool because they are almost see-through. And so we can use genes, and we can put the fluorescent tags on genes, and then we can just look at the worm, and it just shows you exactly how much and where the gene is expressed. It's super fancy, and with a good microscope.
So wait, how big is a worm gene then? How do you how do you see that?
Well, no, okay,
Do you need to
don't
use a
see
microscope?
you don't see the gene. Then you see the product, yes, because
okay.
but like the translating machinery is quite stupid. So like we tag the gene with our fluorescent tag, but it will just read it into a protein, so we can see exactly where this protein is expressed because it's expressing this fluorescent green, red, whatever color you choose.
Yeah, so kind of related to that, what do you find conceptually the hardest thing to explain about your work to like a non-researcher? Because sometimes, so what we kind of are discussing is like the dogma of biology, right? You have DNA, and inside that DNA is a gene. It's the idea of a protein. And that gets translated to, or transcribed into RNA, which then gives you the instructions to make a protein, like an actual molecule, right? I find trying to explain that very difficult, and that's kind of what like tripped up Hannah is like, where is the gene? The gene is kind of everywhere. Like the gene is an idea, man.
Shit.
Right?
It's a system.
Yeah. But the protein itself is actually, it's localized into a
Oh,
certain part of the worm.
That makes sense.
And what she's saying is that you can make these proteins glow under fluorescent light.
Oh.
So you can look at a worm and only its neurons are going to be bright green.
Whoa.
But what do you find when, let's say you're talking to a handsome young man, younger than me probably. What do you find hardest about explaining your work?
Actually, pretty much everything, because like I think this was actually a very good example because I realized that I have missed like some very very basic kind of concepts that I'm thinking I'm telling something very exciting and new, and I'm very excited, and I'm realizing that they missed completely the introduction, and because the message is lost because there's just like nowhere to really lay this real information. So
Yeah. That. How about our audience? Is that generally the feeling that you guys have? Yeah, right? When I'm at a bar or something and I meet a lady and they're like, "What do you do?" I say, "Oh, I'm a scientist." And they go, "No." No. And I say, I have a periodic table in my wallet. And they go, "Yes, I am." Certified.
We
That's
wonder
right.
why you don't have a girlfriend, Matt.
Yeah. I've lost so many women to musicians. Because they're just like, bum, bum, bum. Oh, I'm a musician. It's
Can't
a talent
fight
that you can see. And
Yeah.
I don't know, fuck, apparently. Anyway, sorry. Yeah, no, it seems that like people get through like halfway through high school, right? And they say, no, not a scientist. And they just ignore everything else that goes through their head. And they lack like very principal concepts in order to understand what we do, and why things are important. Let me
Is it the
say that
dial-
again
is
as a
it the-
question.
Yeah, exactly.
Why things are important?
I was wondering if it's a dialogue or is it a monologue?
No, I said the word fuck and I got confused. It just never happens. Moving on. All right, so actually this is a question. Do you feel abstract thought, though, is required to be a good scientist?
Yes, of course, because I think already like when you get some data, it's like science is not like you have a question and you do a experiment and you have an answer, like never. First of all, you start with one question, maybe if you're lucky, and then you get 100 other ones, and plus the data never really tells you what you expected, or like it doesn't really make sense. So you have to have this abstract mind to kind of just like this and use your wishful thinking like to read the data. So I think that's why you need the abstract thinking.
Right, but that can get abused at times, right? There's a certain brand of researcher, and they get the results of an experiment, and it's not what they're expecting. Yeah, most scientists are like, oh, I fucked up. It's not right. There's a certain brand, though. There's a guy that's like, no, this is good. No, we can use this if you just turn it a little bit, and then just look at just a little part of the corner. That's basically what I was trying to say. It's fine. We'll put it in the paper. Not naming names, but all right. So what do you? Okay, one more question, and I'll let Hannah ask. But what? I'm sorry. So, all right, two questions. For those researchers in the audience, you guys love it when somebody's at a conference and they go, "I have a question. It's in 2 parts." First, what are the major unresolved questions in your field?
Unresolved questions in my field. Like, you mean epigenetics?
Well, you know what? Whatever you find interesting, what do you think is the next big challenge to accomplish?
I think epigenetics is now getting more popular because, especially the inheritance part of epigenetics, because now we are really finally understanding or seeing that it does really happen. And I think this is kind of the nice part about, nice thing about science is that it's basically never ending. Like, as I was bringing the example before, like every question, brings more and more questions. And so that's why also, like, my boss didn't really want me to, I wanted to finish my thesis and really just, leave the lab. But he was like, yeah, but now, last year we had, 100 questions, but now we have, 1,100. And typically that's what happens. Like, every experiment just brings you more and more questions. And so I don't think there's, this major unresolved question. It's all very exciting.
Way not to answer the question. Well, then what's the best way to go about solving none of these questions?
Just hire a lot of PhD students who work 24/7.
Yeah. Preach. She's ready to be a PI. Are there any major technological roadblocks for you? So in C. elegans, in the worm, they've mapped out every single cell of that organism's body, right? So what's left to do?
Well,
just sequence the genome of each cell type, yeah?
Yeah, there's always, of course, there's always a lot to do, and I think, what is very nice, especially when you're using C. elegans, because now as the technology is advancing, we have more and more chances to basically sequence anything. You have a question and you are interested in some region of your DNA or something, you just sequence it. It's become so cheap. So I think this is kind of a very nice advancement. And also of course the microscopy is always advancing, so we have more and more fluorescent worms, pretty colors.
All right, Hannah, your turn.
Okay, so could you explain what C. elegans is?
Yeah, so C. elegans
I'm just imagining like a fancy manatee or something. Has to do with worms, not as fancy.
We have a writer for the show, and he thought C. elegans was a type of perfume.
C. elegans.
So C. elegans is a small worm, and it stands for Sanarhabditis elegans. So it's like kind of the official name of this little tiny animal. And so it's a hermaphrodite, but we do need, for genetics, we do need the worms to have sex as well, not just with each to themselves. So we...
Wait, that's how that works? They can have sex with themselves?
Well, yeah, but
C. elegans worm?
Trust me, Hannah. Lots of people can.
You're blowing my mind over here, guys.
So actually, C. elegans is very exciting worm because in the population of worms, there's usually just 2% of men. It's like it's enough. 2% of men.
That sounds awesome.
That's only what we need. It's just to have some genetic variation and just to have some of the lady worms to have sex sometimes, with actual other being. Yeah. And otherwise, they can do it themselves. Yeah, it's fine.
I think it's the future of humankind, right there. Just a couple men for.
Dystopia.
No, robots are coming.
Oh God.
I, for one, welcome our robot overlords. Simpsons.
So okay, I have some other questions. So what other animals do researchers use to study epigenetics other than these weird worms?
Weird worms.
Beautiful worms, elegant
they're very
worms.
cute. They often use rat and mice models because they are closer to also human beings. And but yeah, as I said, I don't really like to work in a mice lab because I actually have to, physically pull the neck and do all this nice stuff. And so we also have fruit flies, like the ones that you have in your kitchen. We use those. And sometimes when we have kind of a disaster in a lab, there's like the whole institute is full of those flying bitches.
It's like my nightmare right there. And my other question was: have you found any way to combat the inheritance of bad epigenetic markings? Or I don't know if that makes any sense.
The best way how to make sure that there's no bad inheritance is just to behave well. It's true. It's like
there's no other way.
But
You sound like my mother.
But it's kind of a nice way to think as well, because often people think that genetics, it's in my genes. I can't really change myself, but we have actually way more power over ourselves and how our bodies function. So also for the mental health, for example. So mental health is also very kind of malleable. Is that the word? That you can
Plastic.
Plastic. So you can actually you can take take charge of your life. Change your epigenetics.
But is it too late for some of us?
Asking for a friend.
Not about me at all. My parents are also watching this. I'm great. Never done anything bad in my life. But if you were to be doing bad things, is it too late?
Well, what they say, it's never too late.
Oh.
But it's the earlier you start, the better, of course.
And what kind of bad stuff do the worms get into that you study? Are they over there smoking weed and?
Yeah, well, that's actually a very good point, because this is the downside of using model organisms, right? Because also already with mice, because we can't really check their behavior. Even though mice do get depressed and they have, they can get obese and depressed, or you already said depressed, but. With worms it's way trickier, because they also only have 302 neurons, so they actually don't really give a shit about anything. And sorry for the word. With worms we mostly just study which parts of the genomes are silenced and which are
So you don't traumatize the worms. You don't submit them
I
to
might,
trauma?
but not for the scientific reason. Yeah.
Just for fun.
Just for fun.
By accident, or.
All right. So now I'd like to. Do we have any questions from the crowd? Yeah. So come up close to here, and Hannah will give you a microphone.
Can I remove the microphone?
Careful though. Yeah.
Which one? Okay.
We're not an AV crowd. In the future, this portion of the night will be called Well Actually, and it'll be open to people that want to correct what was said on stage. So don't be afraid. Yeah, feel free to take notes.
Hi,
Hi.
so my name is Nereida. I come from the evolutionary psychology field, and I was interested in knowing to what extent epigenetics is related to Lamarckian theories. So you know that Lamarck used to say that everything that we do in our lives can be inherited. That was something that we have fairly believed that it is not true. So Darwin suddenly sets a lot of light about that. Now, are we saying that Lamarck maybe he was true about the thing that he was thinking of?
Yes, that's a very good question, actually, because so Lamarck talked about this 1802. I know this year, and so basically, Lamarck was a scientist who said that there can be acquired traits can be inherited, and basically. At that time, this was considered nonsense, and I think also this other guy, Weizmann or something, he said in 1890 that only the acquired traits can be only inherited through gametes. What was the word? Gametes. But now, yeah, we do it's true that the Lamarck might have been quite correct in this, because we see more and more often that not just through gametes we get inheritance, but also just you can actually influence your children, and even not only the the children, like about 2 generations almost, so well, at least.
And may I ask whether it is only physical traits, the things that are inherited, or also maybe behavioral stuff?
Yeah, also behavioral. So there have been also some studies where they show that, so for example, people who had problems with their mental health or depression, that they can actually inherit some of those things and traits to their kids and grandkids. So people be happy.
Yeah, exactly.
And last question, please. So, because it's really an interesting field, do you know how many time do we need in order to some kind of physical trait or behavioral trait in order to be inserted in our genes so that they can be inherited? So, if, for example, if I smoke today and something happens, that it's going to be automatically inherited or susceptible to be inherited to my offspring? Or maybe I need to do that kind of stuff during a long time. So for how long do I need to do things in order to be inherited?
So of course it's not there is no one answer to that, because I think it really depends on the bad thing you are doing or the good thing, and it also depends. It also depends if you are a woman or a man, because oocyte has a way more kind of power over the offspring. But I think it's kind of accumulative. So of course, like the more years you drink and smoke, the more there's a chance that you can influence it. But this is still very new field in this sense. So a lot of studies, especially about humans, it's still speculative. So we are kind of making hypotheses and guessing, but it's not that easy to study this, really.
Cool, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for those questions. All right, so we're running a little bit over time, and I'm afraid we had a game planned for you guys tonight, and unfortunately there's not enough time for it. Can you do this really quick?
We can do it real quick. We can just ask Kadri.
One game. It's called
Fuck, Marry, Kill, Geneticist Edition. Okay, so the game goes, I will read 3 descriptions of 3 different geneticists, and Kadri has to decide who she would fuck, who she would marry, and who she would kill. Okay? So this... Yeah? It'll be quick. Okay. So, number 1, we have Barbara McClintock. This lady geneticist is the only woman to win an unshared Nobel Prize for Physiology or Medicine, which she won in 1983 for her research on genetic transposition. What?
Good man.
I don't know.
Transposons.
Yes, transposition. Described. Sure.
Please
described-
correct me.
This is all from Wikipedia, so. Described as an independent tomboy in her youth, she attended Cornell University, where she received a degree in botany and a PhD in genetics. On top of the Nobel Prize, she's won many other awards, such as the National Medal of Science, a MacArthur Foundation grant, the first one ever, the Benjamin Franklin Medal for Distinguished Achievement in the Sciences, and a whole bunch more. Her hobbies include jazz music, being alone, and putting her middle finger up to the patriarchy. Okay. So 2, Gregor Mendel. Known as the father of modern genetics, this German-speaking friar is credited with establishing rules for genetic inheritance and coining the terms for dominant and recessive genetic traits. He was a thrifty man and became a friar so that he could continue his education without having to pay for it. His hobbies include beekeeping, being sick all the time, and having his research go unappreciated for years after his death. Thomas Hunt Morgan, number 3. Another Nobel Prize winner, also for medicine or physiology. This geneticist and embryologist made flies have lots of sex to study how genes are carried by chromosomes. He also studied sea urchin embryos and married one of his students in a great tradition of male professors. His hobbies include atheism, animals, and evolution. So Kadri, Barbara McClintock, Gregor Mendel, and Thomas Hunt Morgan. Who would you fuck? Who would you marry? Who would you kill?
I'm obviously not ready for that. So I will kill the guy who married one of his students.
Thomas Hunt Morgan. Thomas Hunt Morgan, dead.
Dead. So now I have like one woman and one guy. So I think I would still like fuck the guy.
Yeah. You'd fuck with Gregor Mendel, but he was a friar.
But then I have to marry a woman. So no, I went
Lots
to the
of people
opposite.
do it.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah, it's tricky, tough choice. No, I still will fuck the guy and marry the woman.
Okay, so she would kill Thomas Hunt Morgan, fuck Gregor Mendel, and marry Barbara McClintock. So
Yeah. All right. Thank you very much. That wraps up our evening on Comics Curing Cancer. I apologize if you thought we were comedians and/or would cure cancer. It's okay. I would like to just thank our hosts here at Cosmo Bar. Excellent venue. You can find this recorded as a podcast on Podcast Network. I want to thank Chris Drifter for writing some great jokes. I want to thank our sound man, Carlos Charms. The esteemed and wonderful co-host, Miss Hannah Becker. And your special guest of the night, Dr. Kadri Reis. Thank you very much. We'll have a 15-minute break and then some real comedy, yeah? All right. Thank you so much for coming.